Hello and welcome to TD's Pokemon Lair. I'm TD and this is the Lair, and today we'll be unboxing a box of 10 Pokemon cards I sent to PSA over a year ago, and they sent them to you in this nice little box, professionally packaged so they don't get damaged. Let's get them out of this box and see what grades we got. Alright, let's go. Let's look at a 1999 Pokemon game-based Growlithe, the number 28 card. The front surface of this card looks really clean. I don't see any damage, dings, bends, or anything like that. Looking at our centering, I think our centering is within spec from left to right and top to bottom. And looking at our edges and our corners, I don't see any damage that I can find. Now looking at the back of the card, you can see the surface and graphics look really clean. There's no damage that I can find. Looking at our centering, I think it's within spec, probably within tolerance for the top to bottom and right to left. But as we get to our edges and our corners, both top corners and the lower right corner, I think have some damage, and the top, bottom, and right edges all have damage. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 7. That's pretty good. I'm looking at a 1999 Pokemon game-based Jynx, the number 31 card. Looking at the Jynx card here, the front surface has no bends, breaks, or damage, no dirt. Our centering, I think, looks really good. Pretty sure it's within tolerance. Looking at our edges and our corners, I don't see any damage that I can find. As we turn the card over and look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface and graphics look really clean. There's no damage that I can find. Looking at our centering, I think it looks really good from left to right and top to bottom. Getting to our edges and our corners, our edges aren't too bad, but looking at our corners, all four corners have damage, especially the lower left. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. That's not too shabby. Let's take a look at a 1999 Pokemon game-based Machoke, the number 34 card. Looking at Machoke here, the front surface looks really nice and clean. I don't see any damage or dirt or anything. Looking at our centering from left to right, I think it's pretty good, but looking at it from the top to bottom, it is definitely towards the top. Looking at our corners and our edges, if you look at the corners, look pretty good, but our top edge just to the right of center, there's a little nick. As we turn this card over and look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface and graphics look really nice. Looking at our edges and our corners, looks like we have slight damage to all four corners, very slight, and a little bit of edge damage in the center area of the top edge. But looking at our centering, the centering is towards the top, but pretty good from side to side. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. Pretty darn good. We are looking at a 1999 Pokemon game-based Magikarp, a number 35 card. The front surface of this card looks really good. I don't see any damage, dirt, or creases. Looking at our centering, I think it's pretty good from top to bottom. I think it's a little to the left, possibly out of tolerance. And finally, our corners and our edges are very nice. Looking to the back of the card, you can see that the surface and graphics are awesome. I don't see any damage there. Looking at our centering, I think it's pretty good. I think it's better than the front, probably within tolerance. Getting to our edges and our corners, both right corners have some damage. And that's going to give us a grade of mint 9. I'll take 9s all day long. I'm showing you a 1999 Pokemon game-based Wartortle, the number 42 card. Looking at Wartortle here, you can see that its surface looks pretty good from the get-go. I don't see any damage to the main surface of it. Looking at our centering, it looks pretty good. And looking at our edges and our corners, the corners look pretty good, but as you get to the edges, you can see on the top edge, just to the right of center, there's a nice piece of damage there. As we turn this card over, a quick glance says it looks pretty good, but as you take a closer look, you can see that the main graphics is nice, but on the blue border we have some smudging. Looking at our corners, our centering, let's start there. Our centering looks pretty good. But looking at our edges and our corners, there's lots of problems there. Almost every edge has damage, and so do almost every corner. Not expecting a good grade, we got excellent 5. That's not as bad as I thought it would be. Hey, it's a 1999 Pokemon game base Abra, the number 43 card. Looking at this card, you can see the surface is really clean. I don't see any damage, dirt, or creases. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, it looks pretty good, and from left to right, I think it's in tolerance too. And our edges and our corners, I think, are really nice. And looking at the back of the surface of this card, you can see it's really nice and clean. The graphics look great. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, looks pretty good, but from left to right, I think it's to the left out of tolerance for a grade 10. And looking at our corners and our edges, there's some slight damage to the lower left corner. And we'll receive a grade of mid-9. Hey, I'll take a mid-9 for Abra. Let's look at a 2000 Pokemon game base to Clefairy-Holo number 6 card. At first glance, this card looks really nice. The holo looks good in the light. As we take a closer look to it, though, you see there's some 2 or 3 scratches just to the left of Clefairy on the holo. Very minor scratches, hard to see unless you get it just right in the light. Looking at our centering is to the left and slightly to the top. And finally, our corners and our edges look really good. As we look to the back of the card, the surface looks really clean. I don't see any problems there. Our centering, it looks a little to the right and possibly towards the top. And finally, our corners and our edges, the only damage I can see is to the lower left corner. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. That's pretty good for that old holo with no scratches. We are looking at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Arbok, the first edition number 31 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, it's very clean. There's no creases, no bends, no damage, no dirt. Looking at our centering from top to bottom and left to right, I think it's all within tolerance or really close. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, I think they're really clean and nice. As we turn this card over and look at the back, it looks as good as the front. I think the centering is really nice within tolerance from top to bottom and left to right. Looking at our surface and graphics, I don't see any damage, dirt, or problems there. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they're looking really good. I think this is going to be a great card. And Arbok's going to give us a grade of Gym Mint 10. That's really, really good. Let's look at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Gastly, the first edition, number 33 card. Looking at the Gastly here, you can see that the surface is nice and clean. I don't have any dirt, damage, or marks on it. Looking at our centering, from top to bottom, I think it's a little towards the top. And looking side to side, I think it's within tolerance. And looking at our corners and our edges, I think they are clean. As we flip the card over and look at the back, it's really nice. I don't see any damage to the graphics or surface of the card. Looking at our centering, it is also towards the top and to the left a little bit, possibly out of spec. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, there is some slight damage to the lower edge and the upper right corner. And that's going to give us a grade of mint 9 for this Gastly. Man, I'll take it. I'm looking at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Golbat, a first edition number 34 card. As we look at Golbat here, you can see the surface looks pretty clean. I don't see any damage, dirt, or grime or anything like that. Looking at our centering, it looks a little towards the top and to the right. And looking at our corners and our edges, I think they're pretty nice. Looking at the back of the card, the surface and graphics look really clean. I don't see any damage or problems there. Looking at our centering, I think it looks pretty good. Probably a little better than the front. Possibly within tolerance. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, the only problem I can find there is a little edge damage on the upper right corner. And that's going to give us a grade of near mint 8. Wait a minute, that should have been at least a 9. Wow.